There comes a time for some believers when enough is enough. For them, the spiritual battle of life becomes overwhelming. While there are many reasons for this exasperation, we wish to consider just one today. As we read the New Testament, we relate well with the Apostle Peter. Peter seemed to learn best through painful extreme events in life, such as the one recorded in Matthew chapter 16. Matthew tells of Peter receiving a crushing blow, and what's more, Peter took it from Jesus. The events unfold only days before the Lord's betrayal and crucifixion. Jesus had begun to show his disciples that he must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things from the elders and the chief priests and scribes, and be killed, and on the third day be raised. Now, this would have been difficult for the disciples to understand. They had lived and served with Jesus for 3 years. Their expectation was for him to liberate Israel from Roman rule. This deflating news of losing Jesus to crucifixion was incomprehensible, let alone the idea of Jesus rising to life again on the third day would have sounded absurd. So Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him, saying, "Far be it from you, Lord. This shall never happen to you." It's difficult to determine Peter's attitude here. Was he being obstinate? Or was he simply naive and forgetting who he was speaking to? After all, Peter had seen and heard more than enough evidence of Jesus' deity, yet he dared to give Jesus a telling off. Bold or stupid? I'm not sure, but Peter was at least brave. Correcting God face to face? Not a good idea, Peter. Jesus, being God and knowing everything, including Peter's heart, turned and said to Peter, "Get behind me, Satan. You are a hindrance to me, for you are not setting your mind on the things of God, but on the things of man." Poor Peter, he would not have seen that coming. Peter probably thought that he was simply shooting off his mouth, but Jesus recognized that which Peter could not see within himself. Jesus spoke of Satan's influence within Peter's thoughts, beliefs, feelings, and attitudes toward Jesus. Jesus cut to the core of the issue. Peter was obstructing Jesus' work by imposing fleshly thinking upon God's Son and his predetermined death and resurrection. Peter was totally on the wrong page, and Jesus informed him so. Peter would have thought of himself as sincere, as outspoken with concern, but Jesus corrected every speck of Peter's human error in one sentence. How easy it is to have sincerely shallow, self-centered thinking, which is vulnerable to Satan's influence. Now here's the wonder of Jesus' grace, which surpasses our human reasoning. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and John his brother, and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became as white as light. Included in the trio of witnesses for Jesus peeling back his humanity to reveal his divinity was Peter. Less than a week earlier, Peter was in disgrace, yet Jesus included Peter. Only these 3 men, plus the Apostle Paul, have ever seen Jesus in his divinely natural state of glorification. What an undeserved privilege this was. Those of us who are exasperated are usually like Peter. His own folly led to his exasperation, and he couldn't see it. It took Jesus' extreme words plus grace for Peter's eyes to be opened to the grace in his life, which changed the way Peter looked at everyone, including Jesus. Next time, we shall continue towards learning as Peter did. What is the immeasurable greatness of his power toward us who believe, according to the work of his great might? But for today, remember the grace which allows us, like Peter, to know Jesus Christ as Lord.